Beginning by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning share, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Adar Aleph, to thank Mrs. Selma Woolf for dedicating all the Shuman Joshos this month, with immense gratitude for the refuos from Hashem, in the merit of a refuah sheleima for all of those in need, and the zchus of our brave soldiers and the return of our hostages, to thank the Schwarzbaum family for dedicating all the Shuman Joshos this month in memory of Rabbi Aharon Schwarzbaum, Aharon Yosef ben Meir, the Ziv, Lavine, and Behrman families in memory of William Ziv, Zev, Shmuel ben Yisrael. Our week of learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack In, the zchus of refuah sheleima for Mr. Jack Levey, Yaakov ben Etta Leah, who is undergoing surgery this week in Eretz Yisroel, and in the zchus of Sergeant Major Dennis Yaakov. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah, all of the families in neshama, and all of those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. Let's tell you something really incredible. Baruch Hashem, it's beautiful to see. Yesterday, Steve was in Warsaw. Steve was in Newark. You'll see what I said. This morning, David Kahana is on Zoom. He tells that he's in Warsaw. So just saying, Baruch Hashem, the incredible part of the daf is, wherever you go, Baruch Hashem, the daf is with you. So beautiful and so incredible. All right, let us begin. Today's daf is and the shir today is sponsored by the Schoenfeld family in honor of Bava Metziah Daf Hey. Bava Metziah Daf Hey. Baruch Hashem, that's the dedication. Incredible. We'll say, so let us begin. So we are picking up, today's daf is Daf Hey. We are picking up on Dalal Mabez 4b, and we are picking up Masif Marzutra Beid Rav Nachman. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lines up from the bottom. So remember again, interestingly enough, our topic is still the statement of Rabbi Chia. Now remember again, we've gone on many, it's not even tangents, but that conversation is kind of branched off in many different directions, but the core conversation is the same, right? Rabbi Chia said back on Gimel Amud Aleph that what happens, Reuven goes over to Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you nothing. Witnesses come along and say, Shimon, you owe Reuven $500. So now, again, Shimon is going to be chayiv for the $500. So the shaila is, what about the remaining $500? Rabbi Chia says that Shimon now has to swear on the remaining $500. Why? Shelo te'odas piv kidola me'adas edim. Because ultimately, because we say that one's own admission should be no stronger than edus. So just as modeh b'mikzas makes you chayv in shvuah, so to kind of like what it comes down to is almost like what we would call an edus b'mikzas. So it's when there's testimony about part of a claim, that will trigger testimony regarding the rest of the claim. Of course, now this branched off in a whole variety of directions. Most specifically, now where we found ourselves yesterday, but also was in the dramatic machlokes regarding halach. What is the status of halach? So that was a machlokes between Rabbi Chia and Rav Sheshes. So Rabbi Chia felt that halach is just like a regular case of modeh b'mikzas, and Rav Sheshes felt that halach was not modeh b'mikzas. Okay, so we'll say, so then that then branched off into another machlokes regarding if Reuven lent money to Shimon in a document that just says, you owe me slaim. Yomi slaim. Reuven claims he lent him 5 slaim. So Shimon claims he only borrowed 3 slaim. So what's the status of that case? From Shimon Elazar, that ultimately, again, that's modeh b'mikzas. Rabbi Akiva, no, that's Meishiv Aveda. Since halacha l'maisi, he could only be really entitled based on the shtar to 2 slaim. We then try to infer what each of those respective shitos would hold vis-a-vis halach. Okay, so we just reviewed the last 2 blocks. Good, so we'll say, so now we pick up, again, kind of embedded still in these same fundamental machloksim. So here we go. So Masim Rav Nachman. Very interesting. So we'll say, by the way, you'll also see part of the real excitement of Bava Metziah is how is so many different concepts brought up in the course of a discussion. Each of them is going to go ahead and get their own attention as we go on. So let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. So we'll say, watch this. Let's say Reuven makes claim against Shimon for both kelim and karkos. So he says, Shimon, you owe me utensils, kelim, and karka. And I'm both saying that kelim in this context is movable property, and karka, which is karka, immovable property. So what's halacha? Hold the kelim the cover karkos. So let's say again, Shimon admitted that he owed the kelim, but he denied that he owed the karka. Or hold the bekarkos v'kafar b'kelim, or he admitted that he owed the karka, but he denied that he owed the kelim. What's the halacha? Pater. Pater. Now we'll say, here's what's interesting. You would say, this sounds like a modeh b'miktsas, right? Because remember, the claim in its entirety is comprised of kelim and karka. So essentially what's happening over here, so Shimon is admitting part of the claim, right? He's admitting either kelim or karka, depending on the case. The Gemara says, that's not modeh b'miktsas. Why is it not modeh b'miktsas? Because halach l'maisa, you never swear regarding karka. Ein nishba'in al kfiras karkos. Or to say a little bit differently, any claim that involves real property doesn't come to a shvuah. Now again, we've actually mentioned this concept now today and yesterday. We'll see where that concept comes from. So right now we'll accept it as fact, but l'maisa we'll delve into a little bit. Take a look at Rashi. Pater. Rashi is the last short line. Because we'll say at the end of the day, halacha l'maisa, you can never come to a shvuah based on a claim regarding karka. Fine. So the Gemara says, miksas kelim. We'll say, what happens if halacha l'maisa, again, what happens if Reuven makes the claim against Shimon and Shimon admits a partial responsibility for kelim, then chayiv. Then in that case, God says it's going to be modeh b'miksas and kelim, and that ultimately, again, will generate the chiv of shua modeh b'miksas and Shimon. Taima, the kelim v'karkos, the karka lav bas shvuahi. They both say, now, in the first case, the reason why, if it's a claim of kelim and karka, even if Shimon admits the kelim, or the karka for that matter, that there's not going to be a shvuah, is because there's karka involved, and ein nishba'in ala karkos. We do not go ahead and make a shvuah based on karka. So the Gemara says, ha kelim v'kelim, dumya de kelim v'karkos. They'll say, but if you were to have a case of kelim and kelim, that was similar to a case of kelim and karkos, you'd be chayiv. Now we'll say, the Gemara says, what are you talking about? So heichi dami, what's the case? Lav da'amar le helich. So we'll say, imagine for the following situation, imagine for a moment, so Reuven claimed, Shimon, you owe me $1,000 of kelim. Shimon says, I only borrowed $500 worth of kelim, and I never even used them. They're extant. Heilich. So we'll say the Gemara infers from that ultimately, again, if it was a case like that, you would be chayiv a shvuah, ushma mina heilich chayiv. And see from here that heilich is effectively treated like modeh b'miktsas, and therefore halacha l'mais you be chayiv in a shvuah. We'll say, I want to give the same caveat that I gave yesterday, that heilich is a major sugya. I'm not doing it justice over here. We're just going in heilich. There are different shitos of what heilich means. We're just going in Rashi, and we're just going to kind of keep going through that. But again, I just feel obligated to full disclosure, that there's a much bigger sugya unfolding over here. So Gemara says, lo, the olam, emelacha, kelim, v'kelim, nami, pater. No, I would disagree with that. Even in a case of kelim and kelim, you'd be pater. V'hadikani, in other words, we'll say, even if you were to set it up like a case of heilich, because we would pass in that heilich is pater from shvuah, the Gemara is suggesting. So the Gemara says, even if it was kelim v'kelim, nami pater, v'hadik tani kelim v'karkos, so why did it bring up a case of kelim and karkos? Ha kamash malon, hodeh b'miktsas kelim, chayiv af ala karkos. So we'll say, it's to teach me the following situation. That I will say, now watch this. In the case of where you have kelim and karkos, right? So you have a dual claim, right? Reuven comes to Shimon, you owe me kelim and karka. Fine. We'll say, so in a case where halacha l'maisa, let's say Shimon admitted kelim but denied karka, or karka and denied kelim, you would not be chayiv a shvuah in that case, right? Why? Because we'll say it's not called modeh b'miktsas, or I should say differently. Any claim that involves karka, there's no shvuah. Again, we don't know why that is. We're just accepting that as fact right now. However, what about the following case? Let's say Reuven says to Shimon, you owe me kelim and karka, and he says, you owe me $1,000 of kelim, $1,000 of karka. And Shimon says, I only owe you $500 of kelim. Oh, so we'll say that would be a case of modeh b'miktsas and kelim, where halacha l'maisa, that would generate a shvuah. So what's the novelty in this case? So we'll say, listen to this. So hakamash malon, hodeh b'miktsas kelim, chayiv af ala karkos. So something fascinating happens over here. That I will say, if you are watch this. So if you're modeh b'miktsas and kelim, so again, if you have a partial admission on the claim of kelim, that could generate a shvuah on karka. But 1 second. You just said that we don't swear on karka. So the Gemara says, "My kamashmalon, what are you coming to teach me? Zokakin?" Oh, okay, so we'll say, so now another new sugya. Now another sugya, a new concept. So we'll say, we've actually seen this before. Zokakin means like this. Zokakin means there are certain things, certain halachic realities, which do not generate an obligation for shvuah on their own. But once you're already swearing, will make that oath devolve upon those other areas as well. In other words, we'll say the logic is, once you're already taking a shvuah, there could be certain things which cannot generate an obligation or shvuah. But once you're already taking the shvuah, we could pile those on. So that, I'm sorry? Gilgal, yeah. Oh, so, excuse me, I'm sorry. I had such Bekim and Shas over here. I forgot who I'm dealing with. All right, but correct, right? Yes, Gilgal Shvuah, correct. I'm sorry, I'm explaining it too much. Beautiful. I'll say, so the Meir said that's what it is. So the Gemara says, okay, so therefore, again, if you're modeh b'mitzvahs in kelim, then ultimately, once we have you swearing for the modeh b'mitzvahs kelim, we'll throw on the shvuah as well. That's the chiddush over here. To which the Gemara says, really, that's what you're coming to teach me? Tanina, we learned that already. We already learned that. The Gemara says, Tanina, zokekin an nechasim she'lan achrayis, es an nechasim she'shlan achrayis, lishav aleim. We've already learned this, so I'll say, you're right, we already established this. You can't take a shvuah on real property, but you can't take a shvuah on movable property. So once we go ahead and make you chayiv a shvuah for the movable property, zokikin. We're going to say zokikin is just another lashon of Gilgal. Right? Zokikin will go ahead and will roll the shvuah onto you for the real property as well. To which the Gemara says, you're right. Hacha ikar hasam agav grara nasba. To which the Gemara says, you're right. The truth is here, where the Gemara is quoting a Mishnah from Shavuos, here this is the Iker, but over there by Kiddushin, when they quote it, also we see this a lot of times, that sometimes the Gemara will repeat something, because sometimes in one place it's stated as the primary halacha, and again, which is what's happening in Shavuos, but in Masechtas Kiddushin, when it's quoted as the secondary halacha. Okay, but also interesting is, we'll see here the distinction. So again, if the claim is for Kelim and Karka, and so Reuben's coming against Shimon. Shimon denies Kalim, admits Karka, or vice versa. There's no modeh b'mitzvahs because that is a claim of Karka. If the modeh b'mitzvahs, however, is in a Kalim, then ultimately he could be chayiv shvuah. And once he's chayiv shvuah on the Kalim, he's going to be chayiv shvuah on the Karka as well. So I'll just tell you just a tremendous Musar Haskell in this idea of Gilgul Shvuah, or Zokikin as we're calling it over here. Now let's say, what does Gilgul Shvuah say? Gilgul Shvuah says like this: there are certain things that you cannot be brought to Shvuah for. But once you're swearing already regarding A, we'll add on other items as well. And I will say the same thing works that way in the realm of Chet and in the realm of Aveira. There are certain things that the Ribono Shel Olam overlooks. Right, Chazal tells us, overlooks certain averos. The problem is that once my behavior reaches a certain threshold, then now there's accountability for all of the smaller acts that led me to this as well. You see, Chet doesn't happen in a vacuum. Chet, we know this. Rabbi Soloveitchik speaks about this concept that there's Chet, there's sin, and there's derech chotim. There's the pathway to sin. The pathway to sin is often paved with smaller, sometimes even innocuous things that are not sinful in and of themselves, but are not the right decisions for me. I put myself in the wrong place. I surround myself with the wrong people. I just make decisions that are not great, but by themselves, they're not a big deal. So Baruch Hu says, okay, pass, I'll give you a pass on this, pass on this, pass on this. However, sometimes what happens in life is those innocuous, quote-unquote innocuous things combine together and lead me to a certain result. Once I get to that result, then there's liability. And once there's liability, so to speak, there's like a look-back period. And that look-back says, how did you get here? How did I get here? And I will say, sometimes the process of tshuva, the mistake we often make with tshuva is that we only do tshuva for the chet, for the action itself, without being retrospective and asking myself, how did I get here? Because as I said before, chet never happens in a vacuum. Chet is a composite of a whole series of choices that I've made to get me to this point. And without engaging in the retrospective, analytic process of understanding how did I get here, I'm going to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. And unfortunately, once I cross that threshold of sin, Gilgul Shua, there's liability for all of those previous smaller, innocuous actions as well, because it turns out that now all of those things got me, unfortunately, to the destination that I got to. So there's Gilgul Shua, and to a certain degree, there's Gilgul Tshuva. Gilgul Shua, Gilgul Tshuva, that there's responsibility, I will say, even for the small acts that may not be sinful, but that ultimately put me on the wrong path in life. Tshuva requires me not only to go ahead and apologize and to engage in the cathartic process for the actual action itself, but it requires me to look back and figure out how I got here in the first place. Incredible. So top of hay, ulaman domer heilich potter. So according to the opinion that says that heilich is potter, sa'amai itzdirich kra lemiute karka mishvua. Shavuot says, so why do I need a pasuk to teach me that karka is exempt from shvua? Ha kol karka heilechu. So Shavuot said, this is actually such a fascinating observation. Karka, remember again, what was the case of heilich? At least according to Rashi, basic understanding, what's heilich? Heilich is a case where I admit that I owe something, and I say it's extant, like it's there. In the case of borrowing money, I never even used it. So Shavuot says, so it's interesting. According to the opinion that says that heilich is not moed b'mikzas, heilich is its own thing, and heilich is pater because it's almost as if the item that the item that I'm admitting is actually in the domain, in the reshus of the owner. Therefore, there's no shvua that's necessary. Why do I need a pasuk to exclude karka from shvua if at the end of the day all karka is heilich? Isn't that fascinating? Karka by definition is heilich. Why? This ties into what we saw also at the end of Baba Kama a lot. Karka in an exelis. You can't steal karka. Why can't you steal karka? Why not? It's there. It's immovable. You can't do anything to it. So karka is heilich. If you hold that heilich is pater from shvua, then why do you need a separate limud to teach me that anything dealing with karka doesn't generate the shvua obligation? It's obvious. Because karka is always heilich. It's incredible. And I will say, by the way, Rashi point, we're like, so you see this Gemara like, I didn't see a pasuk. Did I miss something over here? Where did the Gemara do that limud? Rashi says, don't worry, you didn't even say anything. So I will say, we didn't actually see this limud inside. It happens in Masechah Shavuos, and in a couple of weeks from now, Eretz Hashem in Bava Metziah. So the Gemara says, good kasha. Amalei itzdirich kra heichad dechafer baborin sichin uma'aros. So it's very interesting. Now, where does it come up? So we'll say there is a case of karka that's not heilich. What's that case? Where you damage the property. See, I both say, remember again, you start digging, right? You start digging. Baros sichin ma'aros, so like literally again, pits and cisterns and caves. So in that case, I would say it's not heilich because the property needs to be restored back to its original condition. So that would be a case of where karka wouldn't fall under the umbrella of heilich. Because remember again, what does heilich require? Heilich requires that the object is in its exact form that it was at the beginning of the transaction. So in that case, the karka would not be subject to heilich. That's where you would need the additional pasuk to tell you, or the additional bima to teach you, that karka is not subject to shvua. Inami, another case, hecha detanu kelim v'karkos, v'hodu b'kelim v'kafer b'karkos. So we'll say, so again, it's halacha l'maisa, the Gemara says, the other possibility could be you need the pasuk to teach you that karka is not subject to shvua, in the case like we just saw before, where there's a dual claim of kelim and karka. You might have thought that maybe once karka is kind of wrapped up with kelim in a claim, maybe it takes on like a kelim-like status and is subject to shvua, kamash malon, that it's not. Okay, tashma, let's go. To turn around Rabbi Chama. So we'll say, here we go. Let's go back. Rabbi Chama says, Arba shomrim tzrichen kfira b'mikzas v'oda b'mikzas. So Rabbi Chama says, there are four shomrim. The four custodians who, in order to generate an obligation for the custodian to swear about the status or the whereabouts, right? The status of the whereabouts of the object entrusted to him requires a modib mikzas. So Rabbi Chama is introducing is like this, that in order for any of the shomrim to swear, there has to be a partial admission. Who are the four custodians? Shomer chinam, so shomer chinam, unpaid custodian. Shoel, borrower. No say schar is a paid custodian. Vasocher, and a renter. So the Gemara says, Heichi dami, what's the case? What's the case? Lav da amar lehelach. So we'll say, so remember, so in all of these cases, I've entrusted an object, right? Either with shomer chinam or shomer sachar, they're watching it for pay, not for pay. Shoel is borrowing it, right? And sochar is renting it. So the object, so what's the case? So we'll say, maybe the case is like this. I go over to let's just keep it simple. I go over to the shomer chinam or shomer sachar. I say, I lent you $1,000, right? I put in your custody. I put in your watch $1,000. And what's the case? They said, first of all, it's only 500, and it's right there. It's right there. Helach. So the Gemara says, Heichi dami lav dama lehelach, and we'll say it sounds like over here that helach is like modeh b'mikzas and would generate the shvuah. Lo, that's not the case. Dama le gimel paros masarti lecha. Umesu kulu b'pshia. So this is actually a really interesting case. Now the case is like this. I go over to Reuven. Reuven is my shomer chinam, shomer sachar, shoel, doesn't matter, whatever he is. And I say to him, Reuven, I gave you 3 cows to watch, or 3 cows to water, whatever it is, and all of them died as a result of your negligence. Now I will say, just to be clear, we're grouping these shomrim together, right? Shomer sachar, shomer chinam, no say schar, shoel. Obviously, we'll say there's different levels of liability for each of the shomrim. Bottom line is, all of them are chayiv for negligence, for pshia. So I say, I go over to Reuven. Say, Reuven, I gave you my 3 cows to watch, and all of them died because of your negligence. So Amrlei, so first Reuven says, 1 second, right? Pump the brakes over here. Number 1, so Amrlei, Reuven says back to me, number 1, there were never 3 cows, there were 2 cows. Right? So that's number 1. Let's get that. So we're only talking about 2. The chad meisa ba'ones, 1 died because of extenuating circumstances. Right? The chad meisa ba'pshia. Right? And 1 died, I admit that 1 died as a result of my negligence. Deba'ina shlomi lecha. And I admit that I owe you for 1 of those cows. The lav helachos. Shabbos said it's not a halach case. Not a halach case. So that's the case in question over here. Reuven contends 1 cow never happened, 1 was ones, and 1 was pshia. So bottom line, I admit, Shabbos say, so what's happening in this case? There is a partial admission and partial denial. Right? There's an admission that 1 was pshia, 1 was ones, right? That's not really an admission, but 1 was pshia, right? He's patur on ones, and a total denial. 1 of these cows never existed at all. But this is not a case of halach. So Tashma. Okay, so that would be Rabbi Bar Chama's case of where the Shomrim would swear because of modeh b'mikzas. And I will say now, it happens to be, just so you should know, we don't adopt Rabbi Bar Chama's idea, right? Rabbi Bar Chama feels the only case where a Shomer will be chayiv a shvuah is where there's a hodah b'mikzas, a partial admission. We don't accept that. For us, Shomrim swear about all other kinds of scenarios as well. Okay, just an interesting idea. You will say, why is it being brought down over here? Why is it being brought down over here? We thought it was a halach case. Kamash Malon, it's not the halach case. Let's move on. Tashma, the Tani Avod de Rabbi Afturiki. Interesting, right? Rabbi Afturiki. So, right, the father Rabbi Afturiki said, right, the Tani Avod Rabbi Afturiki, the Rabbi Chia, Kamaisa, Manali biyadecha, Vala Omer Ein Lecha biyadi klum. So we'll say, watch this. So we'll say, this is the same case of Rabbi Chia. So we'll say, here it comes. It's coming to a head now. Get ready for this. Right? This whole time, Rabbi Chia was like the uncontested view. Remembering, what did Rabbi Chia say? Reuven goes over to Shimon, I lent you $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you nothing. Witnesses come along and say, Shimon, you owe Reuven $500. So ultimately, obviously, the first 500 that there's testimony for, Shimon's going to have to pay. And Rabbi Chia says, Shimon's going to have to swear on the remaining 500. Comes along the father of Rabbi Afturiki and says, Rabbi Chia, Reuven goes over to Shimon. Reuven says, Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, I owe you nothing. And I'm sorry, Because the shir is sponsored by the Schoenfelds, I have to be textually accurate. I'm sorry. Right? So again, Reuven goes over to Shimon, says, you owe me 100. You owe me 100. Right? Shimon says, I owe you nothing. Witnesses come along and say that Shimon owes Reuven 50. Shimon owes Reuven 50. So now what's the halacha? Here we go. Yachol yishav. Shabbos says, so obviously, you don't have to say obviously the 50 that the witnesses are testifying about. Obviously, you have to pay. Right? The Gemara doesn't need to say that is obvious. Yachol yishava al ashar. You might have thought now that what? That Shimon has to swear regarding the other 50. Talmud lomar al kol aveida asher yomar ki hu zeh. Al zeh, as the Gemara says, ahodas piv atamachayvo v'atamachayvo al ha'adas edim. Wow. So we'll say, comes on the father of Rabbi Aftariki and says, no. Moed b'miktsas only works when it's of your own admission. It does not work based on eidos. Witnesses cannot, we'll say, the way testimony works is, witnesses can only make you chayiv on what? On what? On what they're testifying about. Their testimony does not have any reach beyond that. So in this case, witnesses are showing up and saying, Shimon, you owe Reuven 50. Done. That's it. But now you can't, but now we'll say, so what the father of Rabbi Aftariki is saying is, the concept of motive makes as partial admission is dafka that. When the defendant is making a partial admission, so he's saying, we both say, then we saw, what's the psychology of motive makes us? Psychology of motive makes us is really, the defendant, or in this case, let's say the debtor, wants to really what? He wants to deny everything. But you can't do that because people are not that chutzpahdik to deny the entirety of a claim. Right? So what does he do? He denies part of the claim. Because his whole chap is that I want to go ahead, buy myself a little bit of time. So the Gemara says, that only works when there's a partial admission on the part of the defendant. But there's no such thing as a shvuas modeh b'miktsas that is generated by eidos. So we'll say, see, here it is. This is the showdown. Machlokes Rabbi Chia and the father of Rabbi Aftariki. Right? Rabbi Chia is saying that the testimony of the witnesses, that when the witnesses come along and say that Shimon owns Reuven 50, that's going to generate the shvuah on the remaining 50. And the father of Rabbi Aftariki is saying absolutely not. The concept of modeh b'miktsas. So I will say, by the way, this is the pasuk one that says, "Al kol aveda," for any lost object, asher yomar ki hu zeh. This phrase ultimately, again, ki hu zeh, that we'll get into this. That's the source of shvuas modeh b'miktsas, that you have to take a shvuah for a partial admission. And the father of Rabbi Aftariki says it's tafka only in a case where the debtor or the defendant himself is making the partial admission. Incredible. So also the Gemara says, Masni sekara misal Rabbi Chia. So okay, so what are you doing? You're bringing a Mishnah to contradict Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia Tanu Pollack. So what? Rabbi Chia is a Tana. Rabbi Chia is a Tana. Both say, guess what? You know what the great part about being a Tana is? The best part of being a Tana, right? Besides, lounge access in the airports, right? What's the best part about being a Tana? Best part about being a Tana is you can argue on a Mishnah. You could argue. So fine. So there's another Tana who's disagreeing with him. That's fine. Lemaisa, he could argue. To which Gemara says, I've a hakra ka'amar. Once the father of Rabbi Aftariki is bringing a pasuk. That's pretty compelling. To which the Gemara says, no. Hahu lemode mixas hataina. So we'll say, first of all, that pasuk is by modeh b'miktsas. That's number one. Vavud Rabbi Aftariki amar lecha. So we'll say, the father of Rabbi Aftariki will say as follows: Ksiv hu uksiv zeh. I will say, so that pasuk itself has a number of what appear to be extraneous or unnecessary words. The pasuk says hu, and the pasuk says zeh. Chad lemodeh mixas hataina. So we'll say, so one ultimately again is coming for actual modeh b'miktsas. The chad la'adas edim depater. So we'll say it's interesting. So we'll say almost like the who is coming to go ahead and teach you that modeh b'miktsas, when we'll call it defendant himself makes the partial admission, that's when he's going to be chayiv a shvuah on the remaining amount. And ultimately, again, the zeh is coming to go ahead and teach me that if the partial admission, so to speak, is made by edim, edus cannot generate a shvuah on the rest of the claim. Incredible. V'idach chad. V'idach. The other opinion will say chad lamod b'mikzas. So we'll say that's the other one will be Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Chia will say v'idach chad lamod b'mikzas hatayna. V'chad lamod b'min hatayna. So this is actually interesting. Rabbi Chia will teach you that one is to teach me about mod b'mikzas, and one is teaching, and one word is teaching me that the admission has to be mimin hatayna. The partial admission has to mirror the actual claim. Again, we're going to define that in just a second. V'idach moda mimin hatayna lesle. So the other opinion will say that no, actually, the admission doesn't have to mirror the claim. What does that refer to? Rabbi says it's actually fascinating. So look, Rabbi Gamliel. This nan. Rabbi says, listen to this. What does it mean that the admission has to mirror the claim or not mirror the claim? Watch this. This nan. Rabbi says because we learned. We're going to see something. We actually have this in Baba Kama as well. This nan. Tanu chitin v'hodilo b'sorin. So it was actually a very interesting case. Let's say Reuven claims you owe me $1,000 of wheat. Okay? And Shimon says, I only owe you $500 of barley. So Rabbi say, is that called mod b'mikzas? Is that called a partial admission? So Rabbi say, so this is a fundamental machlokes of, does the admission have to be mimin hatayna? Does the admission have to mirror the claim? So Rabbi say, so in this case over here, so that's a machlokes. So the Gemara is suggesting that machlokes is also machlokes, the father of Rabbi Aftariki and Rabbi Chia. So fascinating. Okay, so we'll say. So by the way, that brings to a close the statement of, or the sugya of Rabbi Chia. And Rabbi say, I think I already mentioned in yesterday's daf that the Rambam actually paskins like Rabbi Chia. So namely, Rabbi say, kind of just to bring it full circle. Is that halacha l'maaseh in this case where Reuven goes over to Shimon Yomi $1,000. Shimon says I only owe you. Shimon says I owe you nothing. Witnesses come along and say you owe 500. Obviously, you have to pay the first 500, and the Rambam paskins he will actually have to take a shvuah on the remaining 500. So why? Based on this idea that mod b'mikzas, your own admission, can't be any more powerful than actual edus itself. And I will say that interestingly enough, the Rambam also passing is like Rav Sheshes when it comes to Halach. That Halach is not mod b'mikzas. And therefore I will say an admission of Halach is pater. So in other words, in that case, and again, I'm simplifying these cases, they're much more complicated than we're making it, that in that case where let's say Reuven goes over to Shimon, owe me $1,000, Shimon says, you only lent me 500, and Halach, it's here, it's extant, that is not a case of mod b'mikzas. That's not a case of mod b'mikzas, because again, since the money is extant, just the Halach is a different kind of parasha. But again, I will say, we're not really getting into the halacha l'maaseh with Halach because we didn't delve into all of the shitos regarding Halach as well. What about this concept of mimin hatayna? So Rabbi say we paskin that for hodah b'mikzas, the admission has to mirror the claim. So therefore, in this case over here, for example, when Reuven claims to Shimon, I owe you owe me $1,000 of wheat, and Shimon says, I only owe you $500 of barley. That's not mod b'mikzas. Okay, that's not mod b'mikzas because the hodah, the admission, has to mirror the claim. Beautiful. Let's go ahead. We'll say again a lot more in all of these sugyas, but now at least we have a beautiful, hopefully a hold on them. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Hahu Raya. Again, not that we're finished with these things. I want to be clear as well. They're going to keep coming up over and over, but just a little bit of clarity as we move forward. Hahu Raya. What's a great case over here? Hahu Raya. To have a masrile called Yoma Chiyusa Besadi. Listen to this. We'll say there was a local shepherd. And we'll say, the way that it used to work, right? There are two different shepherding models. This is good to know. Two different shepherding models. One model is self-shepherding, right? What's self-shepherding? Kishmo Kenhu. You shepherd your own flock, right? The other method is you have a guy, right? You have a guy, you outsource, and you give over your flock to the local shepherd. So there was a situation over here where the townspeople gave over their sheep to the shepherd every day. I always say, but the way it worked is that generally they gave him the sheep in the presence of witnesses. which makes sense because, if you have a bunch of people giving over sheep to the shepherd, you want to keep track. Reuven's giving 3 sheep and Shimon's giving 10 sheep, or maybe he's giving 25 sheep. So this way, fine. What happened? One day, they forgot the witnesses. So you already know that this is going south, right? So they forgot that one day they gave him over the sheep without witnesses. L'sof amar lahu lo hayu dvarim me'olam. So what happened? So the shepherd said, so everybody comes back. So Monday morning, they all give him the sheep. No witnesses. Monday afternoon, everybody comes back to get their flock. And the shepherd says, what flock? What flock? Lo hayu dvarim me'olam. Right? There were never any sheep. Not sure what you're talking about. Okay. Asu sahad yasidu beid achal tartiminayu. So we'll say now witnesses showed up. And witnesses said, we saw Reuven the shepherd eating 2 sheep that did not belong to him. Right? By the way, that is quite a meal. Right? It was a siyum. It was fine. Right? It was by the rowing club, right? So let's just say he was eating 2 sheep. Achal tartiminayu. So we'll say, so what do you do with this? What do you do with this? So the Gemara says, I'm going to be zera. In Isa l'drabichia kamaisa mishtaba. I'm sorry. In Isa l'drabichia kamaisa mishtaba. So I'm sorry. In Isa l'drabichia kamaisa mishtaba shara. So we'll say, now watch this. So based on Rabbi Chia, we'll say now again. Remember, I said, so we're not finished Rabbi Chia, right? What did Rabbi Chia say? Rabbi Chia said, Reuven goes over to Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon said, we'll say all the time, right? All Rabbi Chia all the time. Shimon says, I owe you nothing. Witnesses show up and say, that's what? You owe him 500. Now what's the halacha? According to Rabbi Chia, you have to swear on the rest. Oh, this seems to be a case of Rabbi Chia. Because what's happening over here? Shepherds said, right? Townspeople say, you owe us a collective, we'll call it, 50 sheep. Right? Shepherd says, I owe you nothing. Witnesses come along and they say, we saw you eating 2 sheep. And obviously, it has to be that the witnesses know that these were not Reuven's, shepherd's sheep. Shepherd's sheep. Right? They know it was not the shepherd's sheep. So we'll say, so now, it seems to be that if you have testimony now about the 2 sheep, according to Rabbi Chia, that should trigger a shvuah for the rest of the sheep. Abaye im isa mishtaba v'hagazlanhu. Abaye says, 1 second, how can you make him swear? He's a thief. Now remember again, the halacha is, if somebody doesn't have credibility, they can't swear. That's the general halacha. If somebody doesn't have credibility, in order to take a shvuah requires credibility. So we'll say, so now we've established shepherd is a thief. We have testimony that he was eating stolen sheep. So how can you let him swear? To which the Gemara says, you're right. Amalei shekinegdo kamir. We'll say, there is so much packed into these Gemaras. So we'll say, now watch this. Shekinegdo is like this. There is a fascinating rabbinic mechanism in shvuah. We'll say, this could happen. Let's say, I have a claim against someone, and now based on the claim, they have to swear. What's the problem? They have zero credibility. How do you let someone who has zero credibility take a shvuah? The answer is we don't. Rabbi will say, but what can you do? You can flip it. There's a concept of flipping the shvuah. And when you flip the shvuah, what that does is it allows the other party to swear to the veracity of their claim and allow them to collect based on that shvuah. So watch this. So the Gemara suggesting like this. Well, so let's play this out, right? So here we go. Townspeople deposited their sheep with the shepherd, but without Aidin. They come back to claim their sheep. Shepherd says, never happened. Witnesses show up, say, we saw you eating 2 sheep that did not belong to you. Gazlan. So now, let him swear regarding the rest. How could he swear? He's a Gazlan. To which the Gemara says, you're right, flip it. And I will say, what will happen is that each of the townspeople will come to Beis Din, swear to how many sheep they deposited with the shepherd, and the shepherd is going to be obligated to give them back those sheep. Incredible. Let's connect though. To which the Gemara says, Hashtanami. The Rabbi Chia, the Gemara says the truth is, even without Rabbi Chia, we can still make the shepherd Chai Beis Rav Nachman. What does Rav Nachman say? Disnan. Right? Reuven goes over to Shimon, Yomi $1,000. Ein lecha biyadi. Shimon says, I owe you nothing. Pater. So we'll say. So again, remember, technically speaking, in the case of Kofar Akol, right, we'll say we know that if you fully deny a claim and there's no testimony, there's no witnesses, then what's the halacha? You're pater. So the Gemara says, Amrav Nachman mashbiin oso shvuas hesis. So we'll say this is interesting. So we'll say, so Rav Nachman will say in that case, we will make Shimon swear what's called the refuos heses. We'll say, what's the refuos heses? Look at Rashi. Heses, 3 hands off the bottom. Refuos shesisu chacham lakach la'asisu lahodos. So we'll say, Rav Nachman says, when Beis Din feels that something may be up, they can impose what's called the refuos heses. It's a shvuah. Beis Din can make someone swear. So in other words, Reuven comes over to Shimon, says, Shimon, you owe me $1,000. Shimon says, oh, you're nothing. So we'll say, so remember again, midoraisa, what's the halach over here? Case closed. Kofer bakol, if you totally deny a claim, and again, Reuven has no corroborating testimony, as they say, ein amal ledaber. There's nothing more to talk about. We're done. So we'll say, so Nachman says, there's a concept of refuos heses. Refuos heses says, if Beis Din feels that maybe there's something going on over here, they can make you take a shvuah. So therefore, we'll say, watch this. So therefore, the Gemara says, even without Rabbi Chia, halacha l'maisa in this case, townspeople gave over their sheep to the shepherd, but without witnesses. They say, shepherd, give us back our sheep. Shepherd says, I never had any sheep. And now what happens? Witnesses show up and say, shepherd, we saw you eating 2 sheep that were not your own. Even without Rabbi Chia, based on Rav Nachman, we can make the shepherd swear. Now, I remember the shepherd himself is not going to swear. Who's going to swear? The townspeople. Make them make a refuos heses. To which the Gemara says, no. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman takanti. What's the this? Rav Nachman shvuah is a drabanon, amud beis, v'takanta l'takanta lo avdinon. See, Rabbi say, you wouldn't do it. Based on Rav Nachman, you wouldn't do it. Why? Because according to Rav Nachman, Rabbi say, it would be a double rabbinic shvuah. What would happen over here? You would say there's a refuos heses, and not only is there refuos, what are you going to do? You're going to flip the refuos heses onto the townspeople. That would be a double drabanon. And Rabbi say, we don't do that. We don't pile rabbinic law upon rabbinic law. I have a sefer klei dahavi leroah. So Rabbi say, stam. The Gemara says, even if witnesses didn't show up, we still will say. So I just want to point out, in this case, the Gemara is suggesting that there are really 2 mechanisms we could get to make the shepherd swear. Either Rabbi Chia, because since witnesses showed up about 2 of the sheep, that kind of creates almost like a modib and makes us type of situation. The shepherd has to swear regarding everything else. Or even without Rabbi Chia, there's Rav Nachman, right? The Rav Nachman says whenever kind of like there's smoke, we could impose a refuos heses. Now we'll say, now in all of these cases, now again, the Gemara says you can't use Rav Nachman because that would be a double drabanon. But I just want to point out, in all of these cases, we really wouldn't be having the shepherd swear. We'd flip the shvuah onto the townspeople because the shepherd himself does not have neshama, does not have credibility. So the Gemara says, by the way, the Gemara says, even in general, a shepherd doesn't have credibility. Why? V'amar Rabbi Yehuda stam roeh apostle. But let's say, even just a general shepherd, right? Shepherds don't have credibility. I will say, even if witnesses didn't show up, right? We still wouldn't let the shepherd swear. Why not? Because the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda stam roeh apostle. Which is also like a pretty like dramatic statement, right? That a stab roeh is possible. Rashi says, why is he possible? Leidus the stomach gazlanhu shemara behemosa b'sal shalach. Let's say general, how do shepherds work? Shepherds let their flocks graze wherever they want to graze. And therefore, again, stam shepherds ultimately, again, are going to be possible. We'll say, I'll just point out how incredible this Gemara is. We'll say, our greatest leaders were shepherds, right? Avraham Avinu was a shepherd. David HaMelech was a shepherd. Moshe Rabbeinu was a shepherd, which is really quite fascinating. Now, the Gemara qualifies this. The Gemara says, so we'll say, by the way, just even before the qualification, it makes perfect sense. Because I will say, greatness is carved from the same stone of absolute tumah, right? Absolute greatness and absolute terribleness, right? It's 2 sides of the same coin. Let's say if you look at great people and incredibly evil people, they have the same wellspring of koach. They just choose to use it different ways. So shepherdry, right? Shepherdry sounds like, right? Shepherding, I would say shepherding could either be the source of incredible carelessness, right? And total disregard for the other by allowing the flock to graze wherever. Or it could be the greatest source of cultivation of empathy. Because now you have responsibility for every member of the flock. And this sheep wants to go this direction, and this sheep wants to go that direction. And this one moves faster, and this one eats slower, and this one walks this. And now you're responsible for keeping the flock together. So do you want it to be a source of carelessness, where it grazes anywhere and everywhere? Or do you want to allow it to be the source for cultivation of dramatic empathy. So Avram Avinu uses it for empathy. David HaMelech uses it for empathy. Moshe Rabbeinu uses it for empathy. Yet, interesting enough, I will say, you see a dramatic Lot, right? When Avram Avinu chastises Lot, Lot was careless. Lot was careless. So I will say, in life, and Mesilas Yesharim writes this idea, in life, everybody's given a wellspring of koach. Each of us has a repository of strength. The shaila is, how do you use it? The same strength could go to spiritual development, or the same strength could go to a life of spiritual ruin. It's the same koach. You just have to choose how to use it. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a kasha. Hadideh hada alma. But say it all depends on whose flock you're shepherding. See, I will say the Gemara says when you're shepherding your own flock, that's when people unfortunately allow their flocks to graze on other people's property. Why? Because it saves me money. However, if you're shepherding other people's flock, hey, you're getting paid by the hour anyway. So what does it matter? I'll take them to the right fields so that they don't graze on other people. I'm more careful where the sheep graze. The Gemara says, because if you don't say this, anan chiyusa leroa hechi masminon. We'll say, how would you ever be able to give over a flock to a shepherd after all the haksiv livnei ivra lo sitei mechshol? We'll say, so it must be interestingly enough that it's only when people are grazing their own flock that sometimes there's the Sahara to allow the flock to graze on someone else's land, because that saves me money. But if the shepherd is grazing other people's flocks, which is interesting, I would have thought just the opposite, that's when the Maisi actually is a bit more careful about where he allows the flock to go. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, because if not, how would you ever be able to go ahead and what? How would you ever be able to go ahead and allow and give over your sheep to someone to graze them? After all, that would be placing a stumbling block in front of the blind. We'll say here it is. We'll say people only sin when there's a benefit. I'm not sinning for someone else's benefit. I'm only sinning for my own benefit. So if I'm grazing, shepherding someone else's animals, I'm not going to... Why would I allow them to steal from others? That's not benefiting me. It's other people's animals. If it's my own flock, that's when, unfortunately, I may be tempted to cut corners. Incredible. We'll say let's go weiter. So back to Mishnah. So Zay Yishav Shein Lo Bapachos Chesed. So remember again, what did the Mishnah say? So remember again, Shnayim Oxen Metala Zamar Ani Mitzvah V'Kol Shali V'Zamar Ani Mitzvah V'Kol Shali. So say what's the halacha? They're both holding on to the talis. So what's the halacha? They both go ahead yachloku, right? So they both take a shvuah. What's the shvuah? Zay Yishav Shein Lo Bapachos Mechasya. So each swears that they have no less than half. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Al the islay mishtaba or al the leslay mishtaba. So I understand. They're swearing about what they do have or what they don't have. I was supposed to say, it's a strange lashon, right? She'ein lo ba pachos mechatzia. I have no less than one half. Why don't you just swear I own 50% of this? Well, why this strange lashon? Amar Rafuna, you're right. To Amar Shavua sheyesh li ba ve'ein li ba pachos mechatzia. What is the lashon of the Shavua is, I swear that I have an ownership interest in this, and I do not have less than 50%. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. V'nema shavua shekula shali. So the Gemara says, why don't you swear? That's not the claim. I was about to say, here's what's interesting, is the oath doesn't match the claim. I will say, what's the claim? What's the claim? It's mine. So why don't you swear? Why doesn't each party swear? I own this cloak. Right? Yishav v'nema shavua shekula shali. I swear it's all mine. So the Gemara says, one second. But no, you're not going to do that, we'll say, because that would look foolish. Because there, the oath doesn't match the result. Because we'll say, here's what's interesting. We know what the result is here, right? In other words, when Reuven and Shimon walk into Beis Din, Beis Din's like, oh, not again, right? Not again, right? Okay, we know how this is going to end. How is it going to end? How's it going to end? Yachloku. So we'll say, now again, obviously, as we said, we can't just split it. You need to administer a shvuah, because the shvuah is the fail-safe against frivolous claims, right? Because otherwise, without a shvuah, every Chaim Yankel is going to go ahead and grab onto something that's not his and claim that it's his. So we have to go through the shvuah, but we know the resolution is yachloku. So to have Reuven and Shimon swear it's all mine, that doesn't make any sense, because that doesn't match the outcome. So the Gemara says, "V'neima shvuah shechetzia shali." So again, the Gemara says, so fine, why don't we just do this? Let each party make a shvuah. I swear, half of it is mine. That doesn't work. Why? Mari leile dibure. Because we'll say that doesn't work. Why? Because we'll say in that case, the shvuah doesn't match their own claim. So we'll say, so remember again, they're each making a claim, it's all mine. So now you're going to swear 50% of it is mine. One second. That's not the claim you made. The Amar Kula Shali, B'ledivreichad, Shvua Sheyesh Laba, Ve'in Laba Pachos Mechasya. So I say, now you're going to say, he takes a Shvua that I have, Yesh Liba, I have an ownership interest in it, and it's Ve'in Liba Pachos Mechasya. And it's not less than 50%. So we'll say, I don't understand. Why do we need the shvua at all? Now, we already said this, but there's just an introduction to the next part. So we'll say, again, if Reuven's holding 50, Reuven's holding onto it, Shimon's holding onto it, so just split it, why need the shvua altogether? Rabbi Yochanan, shvua zu takanas chachamim hi, shelo yehei kol echad ve'echad holich v'tochnei betaliso shechaveiro, v'omer shelihu. So both says, we already said, that halacha l'maisa, this shvua is instituted to dispense with frivolous claims. Because otherwise, again, every person is going to grab onto the property of their friend and claim that it's theirs. The shvua is the mechanism that makes sure that the claim is a legitimate one. The Gemara says, V'neima, migo dechashid amona, chashid nami ashvua. So I will say, so one second. So why don't we say, but one second. But now I will say, isn't there a concern that maybe one of them is lying? And if one of them is lying, how could you allow them to go out and take a shvua? In other words, I will say, so watch this interesting logic. On one, Reuven and Shimon both walk into Beis Din, and they're both holding on to the cloak. Right? Reuven says it's all mine, Shimon says it's all mine. So I will say, now, by the way, is it possible that they're both telling the truth? Is it possible? Yeah. Because remember again, what could have happened? Could be a lost object that they found simultaneously, lifted up simultaneously. It's possible. So why not just split it down the middle? Because we're choshesh that maybe someone's lying, and therefore the shvua is there to prevent mechanism, which means that there is a possibility. We acknowledge the possibility someone here is dishonest. Oh, well, if someone here is dishonest, then how are we allowing the parties to take a shvua? In other words, both sides. So maybe we should say, if there's a chashash that you are dishonest regarding monetary claims, maybe you're chashid nami ashvua, to which the Gemara says, Lo amrina amigo de chashid amamona, chashid ashvuasa. So what's actually quite fascinating. We do not say that. We do not say that just because someone is suspected to be dishonest regarding monetary matters, that means automatically that he is dishonest regarding shvua. Why not? But listen to this. Dilo temahachi. So the Gemara says, Hai da amrach mana mod mixas atani yeshava. Neima migo de chasham amona chashid ashvuasa. So we'll say this is incredible. What's the proof to this? We'll say the proof to this is motiv mixas. We'll say what's the case of motiv mixas? So we'll say motiv mixas means, right? Reuven says to Shimon, Yomi $1,000. Shimon says, I only owe you 500. Now we make him take a shvua. They're both saying, now the fact that we make him take the shvua on the remaining 500, don't just take his word for it. Tells us that's what? We think that's what? He may be lying. Oh, if he's potentially lying, that means he is suspect regarding dishonesty regarding monetary matters. How can you allow him to take a shvua? From the fact that you allow him to take a shvua shows us that what? That just because someone is suspected of being dishonest regarding monetary matters does not automatically mean he's going to be dishonest regarding shvua. To which the Gemara says, no, that's not fair. Hasam, we know Moed makes this is a different svara. Hasam ishtamuti kamishtamet lei kidraba. But say Moed makes this a whole different thing. Moed makes this, he has a whole svara. He's not really lying. He's going to pay back, but rather what is he doing? He's just buying himself time. So the Gemara says, Teida, Domrav Idi bar Avin Amrav Chista, Hakofer b'milva kasher le'edos, b'pikadon pasal le'edos. So we'll say after we have this concept, it's actually quite fascinating. Let's say if a person totally denies a loan, and then it turns out that he's lying, what's the halacha? He's still kasher le'edos. If he denies the existence of a pikadon, right, then I will say he is pasal le'edos. And the logic there being, because when it comes to a loan, the logic is he's going to pay back. Just he wants to buy himself some additional time. When it comes to pikadon, I will say, in that case, he is a complete liar, and he's going to be chasher. I will say, we'll have to stop over here for today. So just understand, we're kind of leaving off. So we'll say, see here, we're just trying to figure out halacha l'maisa, what's the actual verbiage of the shvua, and again, kind of trying to figure out if we're already suspecting that he's lying. Why do we allow him to take a shvua at all? After all, again, don't we have to be concerned that maybe he's going to lie about the shvua? But I will say what comes out of it is something really amazing. I'm kind of leaving off just in the middle of it, which is this incredible concept that even if you are suspected regarding to be dishonest regarding monetary matters, it doesn't mean that you're dishonest regarding shvuah. So I will say again, we'll talk about that concept a little bit more tomorrow. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom, have a great day, everyone. Good to see everyone.